Hello lovelies, welcome to or welcome back to the dollhouse. I am your yarn host Kira, and today I am going to show you how I chaos blanket. Chaos blankets come in all different sizes and all different colors. I don't have a set row number for you. I don't have a set pattern per se, but I will lay out how I do my basic granny square. And you make a granny square and you just keep going until you're happy with the size of it. And this is generally what I use for therapy. I find granny squares are very cathartic and relaxing and repetitive, and it's one of those things that I can watch a show, or I can watch a movie, or I can listen to music and just kind of zone out and just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and just go with the flow. And the great thing about chaos blankets, a lot of people call them scrap blankets. I prefer the term chaos blanket because it sounds cooler. The good thing about chaos blankets is the colors don't have to match. You can make it whatever color you want. You can make it a solid color. You can use all different kinds of scraps. I personally like to stick with one yarn weight, so I will be doing my tutorial with my regular 4-weight scraps. A lot of them are Karen cinnamon roll, cinnamon swirl. Yeah, I'm brain farting all over the place. This one is all sugar wheels from the place that I love that yarn, but I don't like that company. This one is a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything. And that's why I call them chaos blankets, because they're a little bit of everything. And anyone can make them. And you don't have to make a chaos blanket. You can make it full color, one color. You could make it color planned. I don't do color planning well, so chaos. But you can color plan yours. I'm just going to give you a basic model on how I do my basic granny squares. And with this method, you can make them as big as you want. You can make them as small as you want. Your mileage may vary. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to try to help you do what you want to do. Because crochet is an art, and it's your art. So, enjoy. I will be back after the tutorial, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Should I keep doing these? Are these helpful? Should I go back to just babbling and not try to teach anything? Am I a good teacher? I don't know. I don't know these things, so I make videos and let you tell me. So let me know, and I will be back after the instructional portion. Don't forget to check out my Buy Me a Coffee, and give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment. I try to answer all the comments that you guys leave me, and if you need help, I try earnestly to help wherever I can. So I am here for you, although I am also here for me, because this gives me something to do, and granny squares are very meditative. So I'll be back. Enjoy. I have a partial skein of Karen cinnamon swirl cakes in the colorway sugar that is no longer available I understand that they have a color named Oyster that is similar to this, but a little bit darker. I am using a 6mm hook, just so you can see a better example of the stitches. It makes them a little bit larger. In the end, you're going to need a darning needle, and I will show you a tip on the darning needle as well, and a pair of scissors. So, my brain does not like magic circles, so I make a slip knot with the tail, and make sure that your yarn rides smoothly up and down the tail and not up and down against the working yarn, and leave yourself a couple inches to sew in. You can leave a longer tail than this if you're just beginning. I don't like magic circles. Magic circles hurt my brain, so I do one. And what you want to do is when you take your hook, you put your slip knot on and tighten it, but don't make it tighter than right here. You're not looking to strangle the yarn. You're not looking to do this as tight as possible. You're looking to do consistency. So you want to go under the yarn, pull your hook up, turn your wrist so that hook catches the yarn, and then pull it through that loop, and do that again. Turn the wrist, capture the yarn. I do 3 stitches and then wrap around once. These are your beginning chains, so that's a chain 3. We never count what's on the hook as a stitch. Wrap the yarn around the hook, go back in this first stitch. Don't tighten that knot up because you need that stitch open. And you go into that knot, around the yarn again. Move your wrist to pull that through, and let the wrist movement control your yarn. See how you hook the yarn, you turn your wrist so it'll go down through smoothly. And you want 3 clusters. I'm sorry. You want 3 in a cluster, so that's 2. That first chain 3 does not count. Now you want to do 1 chain and then 2 chains. And you wrap your yarn around again, and you go back through that same stitch, that first loop where the knot is, and you do 3. This is your basic double crochet. You want to dip your hook down, grab the yarn, turn your hook with your wrist, and then just pull the back of the hook through. You want to make sure that the back of the hook is going through so the hook itself grabs the yarn. So you wrap the yarn around and go into the stitch, and that's your double crochet. So that's 2 in this cluster, and then we'll do 3. So you see we have, if you don't count that first chain 3, we have 3 here. We have a chain of 2. We have 3 here. So we want to chain 2 again. So just wrap your yarn around, turn your wrist and pull it through. And we'll do 3 more double crochets. And each one of these sets of 3 is a granny cluster. And this is how we get your basic beginner granny square with no magic ring. You want to make 4 granny clusters with 2 chains in each corner. And I should have my yarn on a yarn butler, but I don't, because I'm trying to figure out the camera angle and everything. Now this is your last cluster, so you want to chain 2, and remember that you're not keeping your hook in the same position. You want to always turn your hook down to go through the loop. And you come up here, and before you tighten this string, find the top of your first stitch. Now this doesn't count here, but the top of your first stitch is right here. This is the body of the stitch. These are the top loops. So you want to go through the top loops, both of them on your hook. You want to just grab the yarn and pull it over, and then pull it through that loop on the hook, and that is a slip stitch. And we pull it around, and we chain 1, and we turn the whole thing over. Now at this point, you can pull this tighter. You can leave it loose if you like. I like to pull mine. And this is technically the back side of your work now. So you have chained 1. That chain doesn't count as a stitch. That's just our turning chain. You want to go under the yarn, grab the yarn, and you go through that first gap under the double chain stitch, and these are now your corners. So every corner is going to make a corner. So you do get some extra yarn going here and smack the camera. You do 3 double crochets and then 2 chains, and then 3 double crochets, and that is your corner of your granny cluster. Now squares have 4 corners, so we're going to do that 4 times. We're only crocheting in those chain gaps. So you wrap your hook around, go through the chain gap and grab your yarn, and just do your 3 double stitches. Trust the process. It looks a little wonky when it first starts because this does not look like a square, but trust the process. You do 3 double crochets, and then chain 1, chain 2, and make another corner. Now my yarn color is changing, and we're just going to let that happen. So this is your 3 clusters, 2 chains, 3 clusters. Now we're going to move to this gap space, and we're going to do double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, and 2 chains, and double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, and there's your corner. We got 1 more corner to do. So we're going to double crochet, and that wrist turn is not instinctive. It's something you do have to get used to doing, and once you're proficient, you really don't even notice that you move your wrist. 3 double crochets, 2 chains, 3 doubles, now we come back around, and there's no more gaps. This gap already has a corner in it. So you go to your first granny's cluster. This first turning chain doesn't count as a stitch. So you go to the top of, there's the body of 1 stitch is right here. And this is the top. This is the body of the 2nd stitch and the top. the body of the first stitch and the top. So you want to go under both this is the front and this is the back. You want to go under both the front and the back loop. You do not want to wrap your yarn around. You want to just go under and pull it through, and that is a slip stitch. Then you chain one and turn. Now this round we not only have corner gaps, now we have gaps in the row. So this is round 3 and we're still only doing granny squares and gaps. So you do your cluster. And this is a standalone cluster on the 3rd round, and then you do your corner, which is 2 clusters. So you do 1 cluster, and notice there's no stitch in between. There's only chain stitches in the corner. So that's 3 double crochets and chain 2 and 3 double crochets. And then you have your next gap and you want to put a cluster in here. Notice there's no chain in between your second corner cluster and your row. There's only chains in the corner, and that's how we make our square bigger. And you can continue this for as many rows as you want. 3. This is a corner, so we get a chain 2. And after a while, now this is one of my scrap clusters. So it's all different colors. We call these chaos blankets. But you will have your single clusters and your double cluster in every corner all the way around. Okay, so we're coming around the corner and I am happy with the size of this blanket. So I just did my 3 double crochets and chain 2, and we'll finish up this corner. Don't mind my change of hook color. I'm finishing up one of my scrap chaos blankets, so I figured I'd show you how I finish this up. So we got our 3 clusters and we're moving over here. So since we got our corner, there's no spaces in between. We just do our 3 double crochet granny square clusters. And you can make this as big or as small as you want. You can make this coaster size. You can make this blanket size. I have granny squares that are big enough to cover a queen size bed. I have granny squares that once you get the dexterity down and can use thinner yarn, you can actually make miniature granny squares out of thread. This stitch is useful for just about everything. Though I will say, if you're going to do coasters, pot holders, anything involving damp or heat, you're going to want to use a cotton and not an acrylic, because cotton will be more absorbent and cotton will definitely be more heat resistant than acrylic yarns. So just keep doing grannies until you're happy with the size. I just messed that one up. I just messed that one. There we go. Yeah, that eye's a little too big for me. Let's redo that stitch. So we just keep going and double crochet and double crochet and double crochet and double crochet. And one more left to go until we get to the beginning of this row. So now you did your last granny cluster, and just like you're starting a new row, you want to find at the top of this first stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and there are your top loops. You want to go through both the front and back top loop, pull through, and then pull through for a slip stitch. You want to pull the yarn through once, twice, then you want to leave yourself a tail that you are comfortable with the length of, because you'll have to be sewing it in. So when in doubt, leave a longer tail. I'm just gonna snip the end. Then you take your working yarn and pull that through, and what you're going to be left with, you take, this is my way of knotting at the end of a project. Your mileage may vary, but I take those knots and I pinch them between my thumb and finger like this, and slowly pull the yarn, because you don't want this knot to catch before this knot. You want the knots to tighten from the bottom to the top. And then you just pull your tail. So now your work is done. You can put a border on this if you'd like. I like to use just straight half doubles on a lot of my borders. You can use double crochets. You can use single stitches to do a border. But now you want to take your darning needle, pull this tight against the needle, slip it off, slip that little loop through the eye, and you sew your tail in. And what I like to do is I like to go into the next stitch and down to try to hide it a little bit. And if you go through the fibers of the yarn like this, instead of just going around them, when you wash your blanket, it'll lock the stitches in better. But rule of thumb for sewing a tail in is at least 3 directions. You want to go at least 3 different directions with your yarn, and you want to, I like to go in between fibers on some strands and then just between fibers on some strands. And that way, like I said, once you wash the yarn, it'll lock those stitches into place a little bit better. At least 3 directions. Tail is pointing away from the edge, so it's more likely to be camouflage. And always make sure you're very careful when trimming off the edge, because you don't want to cut any of these stitches and make the yarn fray on the intact stitches. And just cut the end off, and Bob's your uncle. Now you have, this is a total chaos square made with scraps. But now you have blankets. I hope that helped. So do you have a chaos blanket? Are you working on it? Just keep repeating, going around and around. The only thing you need to do to make sure that your blanket will lay flat and expand as it's supposed to, if you stay consistent in the corners. That's where my brain just farted. Expansion rows? They're not called expansion rows. Increase rows. I love getting old. Your increase rows, your increase stitches, your increase sections are the corner. So you want to have 2 granny clusters that have, you know, 1 granny cluster, 2 chains, 1 granny cluster in every corner. And that will make sure that, and after each row, flip and go the other direction, and that will ensure that your product lies flat and turns into a square. If you keep going in the same direction, sometimes your square winds up like more rhombusy. So whether you're making small squares to join together, or you're just making big giant granny squares, or you get creative and make big giant granny squares and then put 4, 6 of them together and make a big huge granny square blanket. Welcome to the world of chaos blankets, Kira style. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out and watching my first real attempt at a tutorial for the beginner. And as always, be kind. Be kind to yourself. Sprinkle kindness like seeds. It's free. Bye, lovelies.